Good morning. I want to welcome all of you that watch our episodes of Rays of Light. Um, Back again for another episode, trying to focus on good things in our county and good people in our county that are working to make a difference. I felt like that my life was being consumed with bad, and I kept reading so much bad on social media and people hurling this and that. And I thought, I know I can do better. I know I can shed some light on good things that are happening in our county, and we've got lots of it. And one such person is with me today, Noah Bryant. Thank you, Noah, for joining today. I love to focus on young people that are working hard to be successful and make a difference in our county. And you are, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're from North Forsyth, right?
Oh yeah, I've born and raised here. I didn't really live outside of the county until until I did my master's and I studied in the UK. So, a big difference going from, basically living in the same place my entire life and then all of a sudden being in a different country. But yeah.
And it not only, I'm sure that it opened your mind to a lot of different things, but it made you grow up a lot too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like just random things happen, you trying to figure out all of your schedule on your own and not really having anyone around you to help you out. So you're kind of just pushed out on your own, and it's a lot to make you grow up, but it was a great experience.
My daughter had a similar, not to that scale. She was
Yeah.
only in DC, but she had went off to school to Furman, but she came home all the time. And so she did a quarter where she did internship at the Capitol and, gave tours and whatnot with
Mhm.
with Representative Tom Graves. And that experience, I said, out of all of her college, that experience made the biggest difference in her growing up
Yeah.
because she had no car. She had to learn. I mean, she grew up here and she had to learn how to ride the metro. And I mean, when I came to visit her, she wanted me to ride it so she could show me, what it was, what she did every day going into work. And I just I didn't realize, and I bet your mom was the same way, of how much that experience of living away, and it's so much different than even being away at college, because I
Yeah.
still think there's a safety net there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went to, North Georgia for my undergrad, and I decided I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna live at home while I can, while while it's good. So I was, I would go to classes, but I was always at home. So even when I went decided to do my master's, and then decided to just like completely root up because North Georgia's in my backyard basically, and so it's a complete difference of, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go do my master's degree, but I'm also just going to do it in a different country. So,
Yeah, that was a huge undertaking. So let's go right to that and
yeah,
let's talk about what it was that you were awarded with, what it was
yeah.
what made you apply for it, and what made you choose Wales to go to.
So I went to, like I said, I went to University of North Georgia. I had my bachelor's in history with a minor in anthropology. So typically you get to choose your minor and everything. Uh, I was undecided on my minor for a while, and I had one professor that I just happened to like was sitting outside of his classroom one day and waiting on him to be finished so that I could go in for my next class. And I was just sitting there, and he's like, why don't you just come in and sit in the back? We've got an extra seat. So I came in, and it was one of the anthropology classes. And it was like, I knew it right then and there that that's what I at least wanted my minor to be, because we didn't have it as a major. Um, I took like all of his classes that I possibly could. And then I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into archaeology as my master's and do that as a career. I was involved with a bunch of like student organizations at the university, and the university nationally competitive scholarships department at the university said, hey, you might be a good candidate for Fulbright. And I was like, oh, that would be awesome, because it pays your tuition, gives you a living expense stipend to use. And so my archaeology professor encouraged me to do it. And he said, you should go to the UK, because that's where he went. And I looked at different programs that I could use the Fulbright for. and I found one in Wales that I really liked, and I liked some of the professors who worked there, and I liked it kind of fit what I wanted to do for my project. And so I applied there, I got it, and then basically uprooted and went over there. It was a big change, but it was great, and I really enjoyed it. And college is not the cheapest thing in the world to do, especially if you're an international student. It goes up even more. So Fulbright was able to pay all that. I finished out debt free from my master's program, which not many people can say. So yeah,
Yeah, that's fabulous. How long were you there?
just a little over a year. So it was September of 21 to yeah, September 21 to November of 22.
So you had to have some COVID, I guess, protocols
Yeah,
different
so
there than here.
yeah, when I went over there, and it was trying to figure out how that worked. The university still had quarantine at that point. So, my first 10 days in the UK was spent sitting in a room looking out a window, which
Oh
was,
no, I bet you thought, what have I done?
yeah, well, it was kind of entertaining because weirdly in the town, someone had pet peacocks somewhere, and they got out at one point, and so they just roamed where our student housing was, and so I would sit on my window, and then I would just watch them go back and forth all day.
Count the peacocks.
Yep.
So what did you study? Just all things to do with archaeology there?
No, so for my master's, I did Celtic archaeology. So basically anything in England that's pre-Roman, more or less, is what or what I was looking at. And I studied the Iron Age in Wales because I was in Wales, so it made sense to study that region. Um, and so basically, like, for anyone who doesn't know, the Iron Age is not like a set date necessarily. It's not universally applied. So the Iron Age starts in different time period or different dates in different places. And it's basically when people start using iron as tools. That's why, if you ever hear anybody say Stone Age, it's when people are using stone tools.
Iron.
Then you use Bronze Age, they're using bronze tool. And so it changes, it's different. So like in Wales, where I was studying, that's like 800 BC, all the way up to the first century AD. So it's, that's the Iron Age kind of period.
So how has that experience and studying that, and I've got a few questions that I didn't even think of until you were talking, but how has that helped you when you come back here and get a job?
So I am working for a cultural resource management firm. I do a lot of work for like GDOT. That's mainly what I do, which is nothing to do with the Iron Age in Wales. So, that's a big, shocker when I tell people, yeah, I study this, but then I work in this.
Yeah,
Um,
but I still, you gain, I don't
you,
believe the Lord brings you to anything that you don't take something away from it, that
yeah.
there was a purpose, there's a
You
reason.
get, I mean, even just studying the Iron Age or what anything like that, you get practical knowledge, not just like the theoretical. So you get like, okay, well, how do we determine certain things, like when we're digging, and what does that tell us when we find certain things? So you get practical stuff, and I just apply all the practical knowledge over to my actual work now. But it's I mean, like I said, you get a lot just from being around it that you can apply to other, like, not really fields, but other areas.
And help people that don't understand,
Yeah.
because typically people think, and I could be guilty of it, oh, another layer of bureaucracy,
Yeah.
that it's the another environmental reason, that makes things just hard to do.
Yeah.
Why is archaeology and anthropology important to our world today?
Well, it's the things that's under the surface, I mean, I think most people are probably familiar like with the National Registry of Historic Places. So you see those a lot of times, like you'll see a house or something. We have some in Forsyth County that are NRHP eligible or on the list of protected buildings or structures. Or sometimes, like in White County, there's a district. So it's like everything within this encompassing land is technically protected. Um,
Yeah.
And so, people are familiar with that, and people say, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is a house that either significant person lived in or owned, and it's set to the right date when it was built. It wasn't modernized or anything like that. So people, that makes sense to people. But when you start going, under the surface, they're like, well, it's just under the surface. Nobody cares because it's underground. So
They can't
why,
see it.
yeah, why do we want to protect it? Well, one of our things, like in archaeology, and like I said, I do cultural resource management, so it's CRM is the kind of shorthand for it. And so a lot of times when you have development projects, it's that kind of red tape that you were talking about, where depending on where funding comes from or certain legal processes, you have to do an investigation for archaeology on top of all the just environmental stuff. Um, and I think it's really important to make sure that when we are developing, and like I said, I work under GDOT's projects a lot. So, when we're building a new road or a new intersection or something like that, it's important to know that we're not, destroying something that, we could gain knowledge from. Yes, it's under the surface now, but if you cover up, a Native American settlement site that nobody knew was there, then nobody will ever know it's there because it's under, you know, it's
That's
under
true.
the asphalt. So, I think it's really important to make sure that as we build up and kind of develop and everything, that we are making sure that we are going through, and if not some of them, not protecting them, just knowing that they're getting as much information that we possibly can from them. And like I said, and so that goes into prehistoric stuff, but it also gets into some of the historic stuff. We might find tenant houses. There was a project that we were working on. Um, I wasn't on the project, but I was on the back end doing like the writing and research in Clay County, and they found tenant houses. So it's, that period kind of after the Civil War and after the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. You have a lot of people who were enslaved go back into farming as tenant farmers, that
Yeah.
it's basically sharecropping. And so, even though the structures aren't there anymore, it is an important thing that we know and say, okay, we can gather this information and say, this is part of the history of this area, that, yeah, the structures are gone, but now that we know that they were there, we can note them and let, make sure that that information is preserved for future generations. And you don't just have a road going over it where nobody knows that there was
What
ever those people's stories. You may not know the names of the people, but you can at least gather that and know, what things happen there.
And that speaks to my heart because growing up here, being 60 years old, my grandkids are like, I can't even calculate the generations. I think eighth generation,
Mhm.
but it is so important for me. And I see this like in South Forsyth growing so fast. And then
Mhm.
we're allocating a lot of money, to brand and for people to know. And I'm thinking, North Forsyth is just on the cusp of that. And it's just really important to me that we take history with us.
Yep.
I'm not trying to stay in the past, but I think it's very important to learn from the past and to not forget it and not
Yes.
forget those people. And that was why on the Coal Mountain Town Center, I wanted it to be the branding of it to be something that would go with the history of the area, like farming. People think that's weird. You have all these new buildings, but I want them to look old, and I
Yeah.
want them to look. I want it to be a real throwback to, we've got Mason Tractor agreeing to put a tractor there,
Yeah.
and we've got. I want the roads to be named for the families that lived on the land there, and
Mhm.
it might not mean a lot to people but it does. I think
Yeah.
it does to the people that came here, they were from here, and I think the people that move here like to feel like they're in a sense of place. I
Yeah.
think when you have a sense of place, you have a sense of belonging.
And that's actually really interesting, because it kind of fits in a little bit with an interesting thing we found out with my research in Wales was, so like I said, I study the Iron Age, and particularly I studied, they're called hill forts. They're basically settlements that are up on hills, as the name would suggest, and they often have either stone or earthen walls around them. And for a long time, people thought they were defensive, but now it's kind of thought of, it's more of just for them to mark out an area of space where they're living, and it's less about being, defending their territory. But it's really interesting because the sites that we've looked at, and one in particular, it's a site, it's called Mechlianath, which is in Welsh, and it's all the people, so that it was occupied for over like 800 years. All the people settled in one side of the hill fort on the eastern side or along the entrance. And when their houses would fall into disarray, probably because they were thatched roofs, so it's probably, 50, 60 years, they would tear down their house and build another house the next generation or two generations after, almost immediately on top of the old house. And then
Wow.
so they had an attachment to space and to
Mm.
place. And we don't know obviously if it was named or anything like that to them, but it seems to be that they were very much attached. This is where we live, this is where our ancestors lived, and this is where our descendants will live, and we want them to have kind of the same space that we had. It seems to be kind of the pattern that they have, because they are building immediately on top of it. It was
Yeah.
weird when they were
I bet
excavating.
it was some type of blessing too, that they felt
Yeah,
like that ground was blessed
yeah, because
to be
there was
upon.
a lot of space in the site that there's nothing. It's just
Yeah.
open. And so the idea is like, okay, well, you're really interested in living right here. You might be doing other stuff over there, but everybody wants to live on the same spot.
Yeah. Well, I tried to do the same thing on on Old Federal Road.
Hmm.
I've always felt like our county, when I was a little girl, my mother would ride me around, and Don Shepard and her graduated high school together. And Don was all about history and Native
Hmm.
American history. And um, he would carry us to see different Native American graves and things
Hmm.
in Northwest Forsyth.
Yeah,
And so I really wanted to see that park become a tribute to the Trail of Tears, because I
yeah,
felt like, it's a federal registry, and Old Federal Road is such a historic road. But how important, that our park, and I think we lose that sometimes in government, that we think progress means leaving everything behind. And that isn't the case.
yeah,
To me, it's the real progress is when you take it with you, and
yeah,
you can still move forward. But to honor the Native Americans, we did that at our park. We were
yeah,
able to get a grant. I feel completely assured that we wouldn't have got the grant had the Native American park not been in it.
yeah,
But now when people walk that land, and that we've got a great walking trail there at Eagles Beak, and people can then read those placards of who lived on that land before.
yeah,
Now, do I think everybody will? No, but I think it might call attention to it, and it at least people will understand that they're on ground, that the Native Americans lived on, that
yeah,
they thrived on, that it was very prosperous for them there.
yeah.
And I think that's what's important, like on the Sherrill House being conserved,
Hmm.
is that, a president slept in that house, and
Yeah,
people don't realize that. And they wouldn't, just like you're digging underneath,
yeah.
they would never know if you don't call attention to
Yeah,
it. So I really appreciate that. And I think that there's all kinds of things that we need people. It's inspiring to have young people wanting to be in that field.
oh
But
yeah,
I think that it is something we all can learn more from. And I think later, if you do that at the right phase, you keep your community names, you instill in people that you are building upon something. It might not be the exact same ground that someone else lived on, but it's ground that had meaning, it
yeah,
had purpose, and the people there before you had a love for it, a love for the community, and hopefully that will pass on to other people that move here new
yeah,
to find that love of community.
yeah,
That's my hope. So before we close out, I just wanted to ask you. I know that um, you weren't a Reach Scholarship winner, but that you have participated in being at the breakfast and about
yeah,
different Reach things. Can you just touch on a little bit? I want people to know that that's out there, and just
yeah.
like the scholarship you got, Fulbright, how do kids find out about these things? And how do they know? Because I feel like there's other people that have that that would be great qualifiers for these type of things, but they just don't know they're out there. So we'll end with that. If you will share with me about both those things.
Yeah, so like I said, I was not a Reach scholar. Reach had just was in its kind of infancy whenever I was finishing up high school and starting college. So I think they were just testing it in a few different counties and areas in the state before it went, statewide. So I was not there. I was right at the tail end of it, so I was not able to participate.
And you
But
apply in seventh grade,
I think it is the seventh grade. Yeah,
and then
if memories, yes, I believe it is seventh grade.
seventh or eighth grade.
Yeah, it's somewhere right around there. And it carries on to public colleges in Georgia. And I can't remember exactly the funding scheme for it, but
It's huge. It's
yeah, it's
huge. It's
massive.
4 years of college.
Yeah.
There's some for books. There's all different things and they really look for kids that might not have the opportunity to go to college if it wasn't for this.
Yeah, and I know because like I'm a first generation college student, and so I did a lot when I was in undergrad with first generation college students. I was one of the people who helped found Tri Alpha or Alpha Alpha Alpha, the first generation college student honor society at UNG. So we were in the first little cohort that got that going. And then that's kind of how I got plugged in more with Reach from there, because we tried to do stuff together with the Reach scholars who are coming up through UNG and
Yeah.
things like that. I know with Reach, you have the way to kind of get involved with that is to go through your guidance counselor or graduation coach in school. And they are the ones that kind of facilitate all the paperwork. And I think
Right.
there's an interview component, I believe, and there's letters that you need. But then once, for me, like once I got into college and I was just looking at scholarships because everybody wants to get a scholarship because the less you have to pay, the better.
Yeah.
And so, like with Fulbright, we had UNG and most universities in the state have they might call it different things, but UNG has a nationally competitive scholarship department. And essentially, what they do is they connect you in and coach you and help you through interview processes, writing your letters that you need to get different scholarships. So my Fulbright, I spent almost a year filling out the application for it. And that was, writing some, figuring out what I wanted to study, what project I wanted to undertake, things like that, sending it back to them. They were really good at UNG about working with you and just going in and saying, like, hey, maybe change this up. This seems a little bit, vague, maybe really focus in on this. And it's a really good resource, but they don't just do Fulbright. They do tons. They do Truman's scholarships. They do the Marshall scholarship. They do basically any scholarship that you could think of. They will help you through the process. And UNG is one of the top producing Fulbright institutions in the country, and it is definitely in the state, but in the country, based on the work that they do and the amount of coaching and mentoring that they do to make sure that your application is as strong as it possibly can be. And they focus in on, what you fit in. So first generation college student, they work for scholarships for that or different things like that. So there are always resources. And I always tell whenever I talk to like new students coming in, I always say there's a couple of things that you want to know going into college that I wish I would have known. And it's one, always go to your professor's office hour as much as you possibly can, because even if you're not really struggling in the class, you want them to know that you're dedicated to the class and that you're working. And then if you do run into issues, they see that you have been trying all semester and they'll be more able to help you at the end.
Right.
And then the other one is look at whatever scholarships you can, go to your department at your school and just talk to them about, hey, what can I get? What can I fill out? What forms can I do? Because the less you have to pay on your own, the better.
Oh, yeah. And did you learn anything, speaking of words of wisdom for
Yeah.
students, of seeing the students in Wales and then seeing students now, or the system, maybe the system
Yeah.
there and the system here, that maybe we could do something a little better?
So the system in Wales and in the UK in general, it tends to be like, I mean, I was doing, graduate stuff, so it's a little bit different, but I had friends who were undergrads there that I would talk to them about like, well, how does this work? Because compared to, so they're very focused. So once you decide, I want to do history and archaeology, that's all the classes you take are history and archaeology. um there's not a lot of like core requirement classes like we get in the US a lot. So and that's good and bad. I experienced a lot of classes that I really enjoyed that I probably wouldn't have taken. Like I took a great psychology class that had I not, you know, been required to take it, I wouldn't have. And so there's, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. And it seems like they graduate faster with undergrad. It takes them about 3 years versus us normally 4. And it's just because their workload is more focused on what they want to study. I think that is something that, if you can wave a magic wand and make it happen, that's one thing I would do is, still have some of those core classes that you can take, or just open up more electives for students to take, and kind of move away from the, okay, you have to take, 30 hours of classes that have
This.
really nothing to do with your degree. They might
Yeah,
be
I mean,
useful
even way back when I was in college, it was, that sort of bogs you down. I think more people would graduate college
I
if they
think
were
so.
more focused on what their goal was, instead of sitting there thinking, why am I taking this math class that I already took over and over in high school, and I'm doing nothing with that.
Yeah, and people, I think you get student burnout with that of,
Yeah.
especially with first generation college students, that already first generation students are at a disadvantage. They're more likely to not graduate than, students who have a long history of their parents or grandparents going to complete a degree. Um, and then you add that on there of the stress of having to take these classes that they may not feel like is actually helping them in their degree path. And then if they do decide to take a break, I think, I can't remember the statistic exactly, but I think it's like a 60 or 70% chance that they won't return if they take a break. If you're a first generation college student, that once you take a break and say, oh, I'm just going to take this semester off because I feel really burnt out, that they almost never restart and actually finish their degree. And I think
I
a
want
lot
to
of that is
thank
those
you,
classes.
Noah, so much for joining me today and for being a ray of light in our community. And I want to leave parents, and hopefully they'll share with their kids, um, the lessons I think we can learn through your interview is, don't be afraid of your instructors.
No.
Don't limit yourself, speaking and talking to other people. Uh, Always there, you can walk away with some benefit from it. You never know that might open a door later. That's why networking is so important, and meeting new people. Also, I think that, use the resources that are here and find those resources. They're not going to come knocking on your door, and you've got to reach out. And it scares me about kids in one way, because of becoming so attached to our devices, that I hear from the work community that they have people, they'll have students come in and they'll say, I can't talk to people. I can't do a job. I mean, give me a job that is focused on just looking at a computer, or just doing, because I have no skills to be able to talk, to look somebody in the eye, to shake their hand. It just, I could never answer a phone. Oh, talk to people. I can't talk to people. I text people.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important that we encourage those skills within our youth, that they do learn how to talk, and they have confidence that they'll reach out and speak to other people to learn, because that's how you find who you want to be in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any parting words? Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, you basically covered it. That's what I was going to say. I think it's really important that you do utilize the resources that are available. And sometimes they're not readily apparent. And I do know that like at UNG that when I worked with different departments and stuff, that was always their big thing, is making sure that this is out in front of students. And other universities in the state are doing it too, that they have to be proactive. They can't always just say, oh, well, the students, if they need help, they'll come to us, or if they're looking for a scholarship, they'll come to us. They have to get out in front of them and say, hey, these opportunities are here. You just have to put in a little bit of effort, but we'll help you along the way. But I think that's an important thing, and kind of honing in those skills of being able to communicate what you want to do and how you want to do it is a big part of that.
Well, I want to encourage you and everyone else to take the gifts you've been given and pour it back into your local county too. Get involved in processes that are going on in the county that might preserve history.
Yeah,
That it's the same with that you're talking about in the schools. People are not going to hear if you're silent.
yeah.
And so I just encourage you to speak up and speak out and make your county be the best it can be. And thank you for your part in what you're doing. And thank you for being a ray of light.
Thank you.